And good morning, everybody. It is Wonderful Wednesday with Matthew McMillan. Now, Matthew, you're a colleague of mine, and I met you at Hypnothoughts Live. However, you don't actually live too far from me because you're just in Greensboro. So, which I think is what, about 2 hours away, maybe?
You're in
Maybe.
Raleigh-Durham area. It's about an hour and a half.
Yeah, okay. So, and I know I have referred clients to you, and you've referred clients to me, because Matthew, you actually have a really special niche, and you're also a counsellor. In fact,
Right.
you're much more than that. I'm going to let you talk about you and tell you what you do. Tell us all what you do. There we go. Can't get my words out.
Well, thank you, Claudia. First of all, I'm a duly licensed mental health and addiction specialist. So I hold license in both. And I'm also a board certified hypnotherapist and executive coach. So my goal is to really help, transform individuals and teams to help them become much stronger and better at, overcoming their beliefs that limit them or their behaviors that limit them. But specifically, when I work with addictions, I'm working with individuals that have what we typically call dual diagnosis, like say alcoholism and depression, and it's the interplay between the two that's important to look at, not just the addiction or not just the depression, but how they interact with each other. And that was, that's been my training for over 25 plus years now. I've been doing this. And years ago in this region, I developed a substance abuse program for the local hospital, and I ran that for 7.5 years. And so when I come across and meet someone like a colleague like yourself, Claudia, I'm looking for, someone that knows what they're doing, for one, knows their stuff, because honestly, there's people out there that don't. And you got to be careful who you choose. So I'd really, take the time to find out about that person. And the other piece is, what's their approach? What's the way they help make change? And you and I refer back and forth because sometimes you have an area that's stronger than I do, or that person may want a female therapist versus a male therapist. But, it's important to find other colleagues to strengthen what you do, because we can't do everything. And when we try to do everything, we do nothing. So it's good to, be able to step back and say, what's the thing that I can do the best, help people do the most change. And, I went into hypnotherapy specifically to work with trauma, because I have so many addicts and alcoholics that had hidden trauma, and folks for the longest time didn't understand trauma. I spent the last 18 years expressly and intently reading, studying, and understanding trauma. And my clients were getting better, but they weren't getting healed, to the point where that wasn't interfering with their life all the time. Yeah. Now, I have, like yourself, we have these tools that are so much more powerful, and they can help people actually, transform. I've had some cases where, people have been, say, in a major trauma, and, when you can help them just dial down the intensity of how they're processing that, that's one thing. But when they come back and they say to you, I don't even have the recollection of that. I know that event happened, but I don't have the emotional charge. And when you don't have the emotional charge to something, it's just an event. And that's what I think you and I do beautifully, is get people to that level. And that's what I mean by heal, because now they're at a place where, that's not interfering on a regular basis in their life.
That's right. And I love that, Matthew. You said that beautifully. And I agree, because so often the issue is never the issue.
Exactly.
We have to, and we get curious, but we don't need to hear the whole story.
Right.
And we're able to help the person reframe things, what's happened to them. And yeah, we both do that. And that's why, as I say, even in my area now, I get referrals from therapists, psychologists. So it's like, I say I'm like the troubleshooter. Because I can do that bit, and they'll send them to me. They'll refer them to me. Much better word than send. But they continue to work with their therapist, because I don't want to hear all the daily stuff. I don't want to hear the story, because a lot of people are still in a relationship, or they're still in something that is still going on. And they need the therapist for that. They need the support. But I'm getting rid of the past stuff and reframing it so that they can then handle this other stuff in a completely different way, come at it from probably a more mature way than their young self going, oh, it's hurting. And, it's like, and now I need to stop that hurt and all those things. So yeah, you said it. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, if I could add something to what you're talking about, Claudia, is that many times where the person's stuck is something at a very young age, and being able to understand that it's not something that just happened. Usually, it's something that happened so long ago, that being able to understand that just talking about it isn't enough. It's and I just shared this with a client of mine this week that has a lot of trauma, that just started to see me. And I said, look, the first time you go through this, that's validation. That's, someone hearing you and understanding what's been happening to you, or where you're stuck or hurting, and that. The next time through is rehearsal. You're actually bonding with that trauma even more. And so it's important the beautiful thing is that we don't really need to know all the details, every living detail, and we can still create the transformation, because it's about getting that person into that space where that it's like what we call activating the neural pathway in the brain. Then we can make that change. I don't know where that came from, but
neither do I.
but someone out there. So it's about activating that pathway first, so that we can create that change. And just talking doesn't always activate that pathway in the way that we need to transform it. And like my client realized recently, another client I was working with, that it's beyond words.
Yeah.
And this is where hypnotherapy, where you and I have this great skill, is understanding that when it's beyond words, it's how the mind works and create from symbols. And so we want to reset that symbol, not just the words. And I think that's important, of how, since it's symbolically put in there, they can't just talk about it all the time. It's got to be past the talking and into sometimes the body memories and things like that.
That's right, because I agree wholeheartedly. The body does keep the score. It keeps the score for good things as well, and that's what we have to remind people, that there are good memories. It's not just always the bad things. And I always let people know that when they are in this like state of whatever, the adrenaline is flowing, good or bad adrenaline. It's like, because there isn't any good or bad, but it's just like you're in this. Could be excitement, but it could be fear. Then. That's why you remember things, because adrenaline is a memory fixer, and it actually stays on the amygdala. So that's why some people go, oh yes, every time they might hear the Disney theme tune, they just go, oh, because they have that feeling of joy or love, or it could be something else. So it's like whenever we hear the da-na, na-na, we all go Jaws, we immediately and so that's why I remember playing Jaws in the swimming pool with my friends. It's like, but we all do that, playing the shark, and we all go to that because it's in there. We remember it, whether it be a smell, a taste, whatever it is, or just a touch. It is. We have kept hold of that somehow. So, yeah.
And that speaks to something about the power of hypnotherapy to me, is that when you have a trauma, for example, a part of you, your psychological part, wants you to not go back there. So it puts this roadblock, but your body may be wanting to heal it. And so now you've got this conflict. And hypnotherapy, I found, is one of the fastest ways to help people, get through that roadblock, because they can't think their way out of it. It's not a thinking thing. And you said it really well, because it could be a smell. It could be, a sound that it has, what is the trigger that encodes or launches them back into that trauma or hurt or anxiety, whatever it is. And so it's about dismantling all of those cues instead of just one. And if I could take a moment and explain where I think we got off track, is when I was studying trauma, what I realized is that we had this false understanding initially, that we believe that trauma only resided in one part of the brain. And now we know it resides all over the brain. So you have smell and sight and touch and sound. So all of your sensory inputs. And that's where, when we understand that, then we understand there's not just one trigger. And I understood this intuitively from working in the addiction field as long as I have. If a client walked down a street after being clean and sober 10 years, they could reactivate those triggers like they had never stopped using. So in the addiction field, we kind of understood this, but now we have the brain science, the hard science, to say, this is what's lighting up. This is where it's happening. And now, I really pay attention to the way the person's saying stuff. The language, the words they're choosing are powerful, because it's telling you, it's leaving these little breadcrumbs, if you think about it, about how they're stuck and how to get them unstuck.
And unstuck them and stick them. Absolutely. By using their own language, that if they are more, if they're saying like, oh, I can't see the wood for the trees, I can't do this, then that they can't see clearly, they're all these things, and that they're more than likely to be very visual, and you would say, use those language patterns back to them. So absolutely. Or I feel it in my gut. I've got, and so, and you can use this in a positive way, and then you just build that rapport with them. So that's what we do. And that's neuro-linguistic programming, NLP.
Exactly.
Most of us have all trained in that to some level and understand it. So, so I mean, and I love it, because it's so wonderful when we talk to our colleagues, because we all understand this and get it. Right. And there's always something else to learn from, somebody else. And as you say, one of it, because we'll always come at it from a different perspective, often because we've had different clients to learn from and go, oh, because every client is unique, because we're all unique, and it is not one size fits all.
Yeah. That's true. And I have a case example of that just recently came in, where the person had been in therapy, but they've not really addressed the fact that they have this uneasy feeling right before they engage in a pattern of behavior that's self-sabotaging. And so when we got in touch with that stomach feeling, and I got that individual to work on that and connect to that, it was like, oh, that's happening before this happens. Oh yes, exactly. And that's again, the power of triggers, is understanding that for you, your trigger might be totally different than mine.
Mm-hmm.
And that, again, makes it difficult to treat addictions, or especially these dual diagnosis clients, we call it. I know it's a clinical word, but it just simply means that they have both.
Yeah.
And the mental health and addiction stuff going on. And that's why it takes a really robust approach and someone that's really skilled at looking from different angles. You know, I just want to keep learning more information to help clients get better, because I know it's helped my life so much. You know, and I had to really figure things out because I have a daughter with special needs, and a lot of the things that you and I know really help with those individuals as well. So there's so many places that we can help individuals in ways that hadn't even thought about it. I mean, you know, even in companies, I'll go in and talk about stress management, but we're really talking about principles of the mind, how to, you know, or even being in a peak performance level when they go in and they lead someone as a leader or a supervisor when they're talking to their people. So there's so many applications, and I just love what I do.
I know. I know, it is funny because when we all get together, we're all like, oh, you know, all the time.
Exactly.
And I love that because it's all to help people, and
right.
You know, and like you say, there isn't one size. You know, we were saying it's not one size fits all, because everybody is unique and has their own story. And what we do is we help them help themselves, because actually they inside know exactly what they need, really and truly. And we guide them to come up with their own answers a lot of the time, so that actually then it's more powerful, the change work.
Exactly. And again, going back to language, people will tell you so much if you listen to their language of what keeps them limited and stuck. I just finished this session before we jumped on, and it was just, you know, really clear that this person was languaging this in such a way that kept them stuck. And if we pay attention to even our own language, like how many times do we, there we go again. I don't know where that comes from, but you know, our own language really holds the key too. You know, sometimes it points out if we're holding a lot of resentment or anger or fear. So yeah, you know, getting a different perspective. The one thing I talk to folks about is that we all have a blind spot. And, you know, good therapists, coaches like ourselves, we have our own person that we sit down and talk to, because we have blind spots too. And that's the sign of a good person that's in the helping field, is they're willing to get help themselves.
Yeah, very, very important. Absolutely. And it's interesting for people to note that when we think about that, those feelings, the big feelings, anger, is often based in fear.
Yeah.
People will use that because it's a much easier thing to use, anger, because but whereas actually if you go the below of it, dig down, it's sadly often fear of not being worthy, not good enough.
Correct.
But nobody necessarily wants to present that to the world, so they'll go to anger instead. So it's or beat themselves up, or, you know, or use the anger to give themselves the kick up the backside to create change.
Right.
Because when you go below that anger, the one for change, I believe it's actually then based in self-love. When people are ready for change, because they're so of doing the addiction, of doing this, and it's hurting their family, it's hurting whatever, then you go I'm ready for change now. And I always, I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only one saying this, prefer to work with somebody when they're ready for change, because then the magic happens, because they will come up with the answers themselves and we just guide.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, we have so many skills that can meet people where they're at.
Yeah.
So, even if I want this ideal person who's going to show up ready to make change, that's usually not the people I see. They're always in this place where they don't think they have a problem, but other people around them do.
Oh,
And
gosh. All right.
and so so they're offering them solutions when they don't have a problem. So I ask my clients this powerful question. I'll say, do you need a solution for a problem you don't have?
That's brilliant.
And they go, well, no. And that's the problem.
Yeah. They're not even aware. There's no
That's
self-awareness.
right.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about, for the longest time, we've talked about denial in the chemical dependency and addiction and bad habit kind of feel. The thing is, denial is not something that a person is choosing to do. It's that roadblock that keeps them from working on and getting well. And so I joke with people after I built a relationship with them that they kind of have to understand my humor. And that is that the denial is not a river in Egypt. It stands for don't even know I'm lying.
Yeah. Okay, there you go.
That we're lying to ourselves that this isn't a problem, even though other people are coming and saying, hey, this is affecting me or this is a problem. And that's the sad part to me, is that people with addictions will sometimes deny it, unfortunately, until they die. It's an illness that people will deny and push away for so long. And so that's where I feel so honored when someone walks in, even if they don't see it as a problem for them, they're blaming their spouse or their friend or their neighbor or the whatever. Just getting them to the point where they say, yeah, this is a problem for me. That's when change happens.
Yeah. And that's really helpful, actually, because that's probably because you do the counselling side as well, why I would get referrals from therapists, because they've done what you've done, which is make them realise that actually they have an issue. They can't necessarily help them with that issue, but they've got that realisation. So from the denial, they've gone to realisation and perhaps even acceptance. But then what?
Yeah,
exactly. What do they do with it? So that's where I come in.
Exactly.
And do it. And then, okay, right. Yeah. I that's so, because most of my clients who I see are actually ready for change. They're ready now. And they
that's a great place to be
for a very long time. And nothing's changed. They've just been talking about the same problem. Right. Okay. No, that's helpful, because I don't see people who are,
and that's why we need both, Claudia. We need people that have the skills and the ability to do behavioral health work or mental health counseling, addictions counseling, and then we need people that can go even deeper on other issues, because I think it's a false thing that it's like, I'm not against even medication for people that have depression and things, but the one thing I've learned to help them understand, and it makes so much more sense to them, and it kind of applies in this arena, is that a medication can help you with the symptoms, but it's not going to change your thinking.
Yeah.
So that's where we need all of these resources, and we're not against each other. We're actually working, collaboratively. That's where we're going to help people make the most change.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's, and funnily enough, that's because I do the bunny talk process. And actually, Matthew, it's quite interesting, because I'll have people, the parents saying, can you help, I want you to fix my child, if you like. And I always ask parents to come in first, where I actually do these emotional intelligence diagrams, my version of them. And then because I don't necessarily call them out, it's just that with the diagrams, they actually show that they will be calling themselves out on actually having too many expectations of their child, which is why they may have behavioral problems, or if there's anger or this or that, actually it's the parents who are creating the environment for the child. And then they go, oh, it's us. And through these, then they get the realization that actually they have actually some issues that need to be cleared. And hopefully because it's their child that they want to, that protect and look after, that they will then get their own work done, but only once they've had those seen these diagrams, which give them those aha moments, so that they are not in denial. It's like, I get it. Anyway,
Well,
that's why I do that.
Yeah, and that's great, because what we need to do sometimes is provide psychoeducation for a client. They need to have some information, and then we got to help them learn how to implement it, because there's so much information out right now that people are like not knowing what to do with it. It's kind of like, if I'm going to assign a book, like a self-help book, okay, that book is only as valuable as someone going through it and helping you implement it. Because if not, then you just use your same dysfunctional way with the new pattern of doing, and it just keeps doing the same thing, but with a new technique of. So you want to get out of that loop, is what I want people to understand. It's like we get in these mind loops. So if you get them out of that loop and into a whole different place, so it's really like stepping back and recognizing that loop is just a what we call a gestalt. You start here and you end here.
Yes. And the hamster in the wheel, and you are literally, you got this belief system, and no matter what book you might be reading it, you're reading it from your perspective.
Exactly.
So because it's your belief system.
And it goes back to that blind spot, how then if someone can sit down with us as a perfect stranger. I've had this experience, you probably have, that within 30 minutes could tell you something, if they were honest and truthful with you, about something you never knew about yourself, because they aren't risking anything, because they don't really know you. But people around us have been in our life for a long time, never will tell us. They're either afraid to tell us or whatever. And so again, that's where, good therapy, good interaction with a hypnotherapist, coach, hypnotist, whatever, is vital, because they can reveal that part to you, and hopefully they're skilled enough to do it in a way that you can hear it better, and that can just open doors like that. I mean, some of my clients go, oh my gosh, I never thought of it from that angle.
I know, yes. And I must admit, I will call people out on certain things. So it's like there's so just for instance, I remember years ago, I had somebody who was, they had a lot of weight on them that they didn't want. Okay. And so they were blaming, talking about their husband in a negatory way, blah, 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 and this, and and then I've got to go to all these functions, and he expects me to dress all nice for him. But she really resented him about X, Y, Z, and da, 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 da. And she said, I wonder, I'm very curious here. I wonder if you're sort of somehow punishing him. And it was like, because you had to go to these functions, and she goes, and then I know I'm on his arm, and I know he's embarrassed by me, and I don't care. And I thought, okay. So it was like a real passive aggressive thing to do, to have this weight on, look, her words, frumpy at these occasions with him, so that she goes, because then he feels really embarrassed. And it's like, who are you actually hurting here?
Yeah.
And it was, myself. Ding, 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 ding.
Yep.
Can we perhaps stop doing that now? What would that be like for you?
Yeah,
What would it be like
exactly.
for you to see yourself like this? Just imagine that. And then it's like, yeah, and sure enough, but you got to get curious.
Hmm.
Very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, and I call that a "I'll show you, I'll hurt me" behavior.
And kids do that all the time with
Oh
school,
yeah.
with teaching.
I teach that to parents all the time. It's like, look, they're mad at you, so they're
Mhm,
going to tank their grades,
mhm, mhm.
and you have to understand what that's about. Adolescents are an interesting bunch, but it's that's a whole nother talk we could
Yeah,
do.
it is.
But
Well, it is. That's what I do, as I say, with the bunny. I'll call kids out as well when they're teenagers. I'll call them out on
mhm.
that stuff, and they just go, hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting when I describe it that way to clients. I'll say, they'll be like, "Oh, yeah, that is hurting me," and it's not really hurting the other person the way I thought.
No,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah,
That's right.
and yeah, I know. Matthew, you and I could go on forever.
Yes, we could.
And I love this discussion here. So it's really good. However, it's time to end, and I just want to say thank you to everybody who's been watching us. We will have Matthew's telephone number and email, so you can get in touch with him, because you do great work, you know.
Thank you, and
And
you as well.
yeah, so we both do. So thank you everybody for watching, and thank you for coming on, Matthew, to share your
It's
wisdom
my
with us.
honor. Thank you, Claudia.